So this is the living fossil garden where we've planted a number of trees that are like the fossil ones, which are only a few yards away from where that photo is. And you can see they're mainly pine trees, but there are also some other ones there because we thought, well, there are other examples of living fossils. So we'll plant other specimens of those, and you can see some palm trees there. And you can see we've actually taken one of the fossil logs and upended it and glued it together. That was quite an interesting process. It was a bit like a three-dimensional jigsaw, and put it there in the garden. So that's that object that's sitting there at the front. And those little plaques are actually tributes to people who have contributed to either putting this all together or who have donated money for us to continue this project. And as you can see, we've got a dinosaur in there as well, because people love dinosaurs, but they're also appropriate because they are considered to be of similar evolutionary age to the living fossils we have here. But as they're dead, we won't go into them. We will stick with the living fossils. And the supposedly oldest living fossil is the cycad. So we do have some cycads in our living fossil garden. We also have them scattered around the site because we were given a most wonderful gift of a whole lot of mature cycads from a local plant nurseryman. And you can see in the center of that, there is a cone. They're cone plants, and they actually have male and female plants. Now, I'm not quite sure how that's going to work these days. We have to rename male and female human beings. Are they going to expect us to rename the male and female cycads? Anyway, that's another whole issue. But this is the cone of a female plant. And they grow quite well in Australia in the conditions that we have, but I have seen them in other places. And in fact, one of them was at Kew Gardens. They had this rather weedy looking specimen there, but they had only just planted. This was in a set of gardens that they have at Kew Gardens called the Evolution Garden. And so the reason the cycad was planted there was because it is considered to be a very old fossil, or old living fossil. That is, if you look at their sign there, it says, right, slow growing cycads, approximately 280 million years. Well, that's not as old as the stromatolites that Joseph held up there. But for a fossil plant, that is a long time for something to be multiplying after its kind. And you can see in the center of that plant there's a cone that's probably a male cone. So we have female and male plants, and they have been reproducing. And mind you, like other plants, that they produce pollen. So they do actually need pollinators, which is another interesting aspect of them as well. What was their pollinators back in those times? Well, it's not a problem if you understand the biblical history of the world, because God made the pollinators very quickly after he made the plants. So he made whole functioning ecosystems by the end of the creation week. So even if that time did exist, that means that these plants have been multiplying after their kind, and the fossil specimens are the same as the living specimens. But there are other things which we don't think of as living fossils, but their fossils are the same as what we have today. And as we've looked through the science news that we keep an eye on over the last few decades, every now and again we come across scientists have discovered some sort of fossil, and they are surprised how much it looks like the living ones. So here are a few living examples of things which we don't think of as living fossils, but when the fossils of them were discovered, scientists have expressed surprise. Some of them might be familiar. Have you heard of these little creatures? Now, they're a bit hard to see there. Can you see those spindly little creatures there? They're often called daddy longlegs and are thought of as a spider. They are an arachnid, but they're not a true spider. And they haven't changed either. a while ago, 2003. Okay, so 20 years ago. We're really having blasts from the past today, aren't we? Fossils found in the Rhynie Chert in Scotland. Joseph, you would have been there, and I know that John has. Okay, 400 to 412 million years, according to the evolutionary dating system. And this is a quote from the authors who wrote up this fossil. These remarkable and surprisingly modern-looking fossils. Now, you'll find that word surprising come up quite a few times. And they were able to study this fossil using the sort of scanning techniques that we have in the 21st century now, where we can scan fossils without actually cracking them open and destroying them. And you find all sorts of amazing detail. And they found the breathing tubes and reproductive organs of these creatures, that it looked exactly the same as the ones that are crawling around at the moment. And they've found other fossils of these. There's another one which was found fossilized in amber, actually 100 million years ago. Arachnid, just meaning like a spider, looked like it might have died last year. Now look at the comments that the BBC made. The Harvestmen hit on a successful evolutionary design. They cannot avoid that word, and we'll probably do some programs on design. There's lots of wonderful evidence and interesting things we can do on that. So evolutionary design, bit of a anomaly there. Fairly early on, in other words, however old we want to make them, this is how they have been designed, and they do look designed, has changed rather little over the past few 100 million years, right? Things are not changing. They're multiplying after their kind. So when you find fossils of them, they haven't changed. And now, how's this for a headline? This is about another creature which is a bit obscure. This was a headline in the Science News Service. Now, there is a journal called Science, which is produced by the American Association for the Advancement of Science. So I haven't given them enough. I haven't given them enough A's. I notice there in my caption there. So AAAS they should be. There is also a magazine called Science News, so it's a bit confusing. So that's why in our fact file and our news reports, I do usually put that in brackets afterwards to say this is the news service that goes out to the general public that is related to the journal Science, which is put out by AAAS. But anyway, this was their headline. I mean, we couldn't have said it better. Crustaceans against change. Fossil reveals 425 million year history of resisting innovation. And what this fossil was about, or what this article was about, were these little creatures called ostracods, which are tiny, weeny little creatures. Now they're almost microscopic. They're just sort of on the edge of vision. Although John recently found some fossils of these which were much bigger. So that's another thing we might talk about in one of our later programs. There are some changes in the fossil record, but none of them are changing from one kind to another. They're all to do with things getting smaller or dying out or degenerating. But here are some comments that were written about these fossil ostracods. This is a demonstration of unbelievable stability. Now, that's another word you'll come across in the reports of these things which haven't changed, is stability or stasis. And watch out for that one, because stasis literally means staying the same, as in stability. So not changing. And the comment that was made in this news report was the new fossil indicates the basic ostracod body plan. There are a whole lot of these, so ostracods, ostracods. The basic ostracod body plan was already present in the Silurian period. Now that's back in the 425 million years, according to the evolutionary timetable. Now, again, that's another one of those terms that's been hijacked by the evolution. The Silurians were another one of those Celtic tribes. So Silurian refers to fossils that were found originally in Great Britain near Wales. So you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, Joseph. The Silurians, where did they live? Anyway, they were
Scottish. I think it's a Scottish tribe, if I remember correctly.
Scottish tribe, right? Yeah. So I knew it was Celtic. So either one or the other. But anyway, they refer to a place. They don't refer to millions of years or time. That has been added to those names after they were originally coined, and so it refers to the rocks that were found in this particular place where the Silurian tribe used to live. So again, don't be afraid to use those terms, but know what they mean and be prepared to explain them. A lot of them refer to places, others are more descriptive terms like Cretaceous, meaning chalky. So really, really old in the evolutionary timetable, but if they haven't changed, they haven't evolved. So they're no help to the theory of evolution, no matter how you want to classify them in terms of time or in terms of rock layers. Now, here are a couple of things that you might not think of as living fossils. That are a little bit more obvious. These are fairly more microscopic creatures or just on the edge of vision, but I'm sure you've seen some pelicans. I love pelicans. I often go to the coast where I have relatives, and there are lots of pelicans that live around here. And I also live near a lake, and sometimes the pelicans will fly inland and we see them landing on our lake, and then they disappear to fly further inland into Australia. And there was a report about a fossil pelican a while ago, and which we have reported in our news reports here. And this is the heading of their article. The earliest known pelican reveals 30 million years of. Now notice that term there, evolutionary stasis. Now, again, that's a contradiction in term. Evolution is a theory about how things change. Stasis means stay the same. So we have a theory of things that stay the same, or a theory of things that change, revealing stasis, revealing how things stay the same. Doesn't make sense at all. And particularly interesting in pelicans, of course, are their beaks. You've all heard the old joke, right? The wondrous bird is the pelican. Its beak can hold more than its belly can. And so when they found a fossil pelican, which actually did have its beak preserved, they were surprised that, wow, the pelican beak just looks like a living pelican beak. And this is the BBC reporting what surprised them most was that this ancient pelican is almost identical to modern species. So nothing's changed. It's genuine stasis, but it's not evolutionary stasis. It's after their kind stasis. Things have stayed the same. That fossil was the same as the living ones. So even pelicans qualify as living fossils. And the BBC article went on to say the discovery surprised the researchers because it revealed just how little pelicans have evolved over huge expanses of time. And another one you probably don't think of as a living fossil are hummingbirds. And here was a report about a hummingbird that we reported back in 2004. These things are still in our fact file. You can go looking for them. It's quite a big archive now. We've been collecting them for about 20 years. So, Old World Fossil Record of Modern Type Hummingbirds. And this referred to a hummingbird fossil that was found in Germany. Now, it's not quite as old as the stromatolites or the cycads, okay, 30 to 34 million years oldest in the evolutionary timetable, only a fraction of that. But in terms of the life cycle of living things, that is an extremely long time if you think of how long a hummingbird lives, which are or how long a pelican lives. I mean, we're talking about sort of years and decades. We're not talking about millions of years. So they are extraordinary long periods of time that sort of disappear into the dim distance in terms of the life cycles of these things. So there's an awful lot of reproducing after their own kind, even if that time didn't even if that time did exist. So what was said about this thing, and what was it called? Well, it was given this wonderful name. Isn't that wonderful name? Eurotrichilus inexpectatus. Now notice the species name. All right. And this is how the scientist who wrote this up described. If you name a fossil, or if you are entitled to name a fossil, which, other words, it's something new that you can give it a new species name, you do have to explain what the name means. So here is the explanation, right? Euro for Europe, that's fairly obvious. Trochilus is the genus of modern hummingbirds, and the specific name, meaning the species name, is derived from the Latin inexpectatus, for the unexpected. In other words, this was a surprise. Now notice how modern day scientists with their evolutionary mindset keep on being surprised by finding fossils that are the same as living things, whereas we're not. So inexpectatus for unexpected, and refers to the surprising occurrence of modern type hummingbirds in Europe. And there was a lovely commentary, and that's an interesting thing in itself, that this hummingbird was found in Europe. They don't live in Europe these days unless they've been imported. They are considered to be native to North America. But again, that's another story that we can talk about some other time. But there was this lovely comment about this fossil. The amazing thing about this fossil is that it is essentially a modern hummingbird. My mind is a little blown. So are your minds blown? Well, if you believe in the Bible, your minds aren't blown. Having a modern type hummingbird buried in the rocks and living hummingbirds flying around, particularly beautiful creatures, right? Our minds aren't blown at all. And hopefully your minds won't be blown either. And if we can come back to us now, that's the end of the slideshow. If anyone would like to make any comments about this, but just a reminder that the world is filled with living fossils. They're not anomalies at all. Charles Darwin was wrong about that just as much as he was wrong about various other things.